Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. Deciding to actually start the live stream a little bit earlier, and I think I just need to quickly check the settings in terms of when I've actually started the stream, because I've decided to load it a bit earlier. Hope you guys are all doing well though, in terms of your game weeks and things like that. Salah captain was good. Yeah, he was good for me as well. How are you doing, Kai? Where are you ranked right now, Kai? I'm just kind of curious because obviously you were doing really hot 2-3 weeks ago. Thanks to Trippier hauling in previous game. 140k. Nice. Certainly out for -4. Yes, very good. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That's pretty tough. Or sounds pretty tough. You did the wild card, same as me. Awesome. I think we did well this week, to be honest, with the wild card. And you know what's more interesting is obviously, okay, maybe there's a little bit of a problem with Richarlison, right? But I still think that he has a very good chance of starting next week. So not really too worried about it, at the end of the day. Right now, I'm around 80,000 in the world. So hopefully we can continue there. We got to keep an eye on Martinelli. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's not even about bringing in Martinelli versus Chelsea, but more so bringing in Martinelli versus Sheffield United, to be honest, sounds like a really good transfer. What game week best? I would say game week 10, because presumably you have a couple City players on your team. Yeah, the red card was just bad luck for us, to be honest. Like, I think Richarlison is obviously an early substitute. Like I don't think Angie, for example, sees him as a 90-minute player, but that's not the point. Yeah, and Alvarez as well. I'm pretty happy about his substitution. It does show, obviously, that now that they have enough depth in the team, sometimes, obviously, Pep prefers control. Sometimes he prefers a little bit of dynamicism. He still thinks that Alvarez is more within the dynamicism category. You could see that, too, as well, when he was actually subbed or, benched, prior to the Red Bull Leipzig game. And Richarlison, yeah, I mean, he had 2 easy opportunities to score as well. So, Yep. Diaby also, yeah, but the Diaby one's a little bit different because I think Diaby's he's injured, right? So, or he was injured before this week, so he should be close. Yeah, Porro should have scored. Richarlison should have scored definitely. Yeah, these sorts of things are obviously important to think about. Awesome, Dobber, well done. Thanks for the Johnston pick. No problem, Dobber. Well done with the Johnston goalkeeping pick, obviously. 72 points, Salah captain. That's more than me. I mean, I got only 65 at the end of the day, but I think I'm pretty happy with the team in terms of, how good it looks in terms of next week, right? Because when we look at next week, the way I have my team, I'm very happy to really have Gordon back in the team versus Crystal Palace. Then I've got Trippier as well. Pedro Porro, West Ham. These are all home fixtures. The whole team has home fixtures. How often can you actually say that? And exactly, Diaby has got 2 weeks of rest. First time a non-Haaland captaincy has worked in my favor. I mean, to be honest, Haaland has blanked a couple times this season, but I'm definitely captaining him next week. Exactly. So I'm sort of happy about the team as it looks right now. And then on game week 10, obviously I can play Colwill because he's at Brentford at home. As I said, the whole idea with going Colwill is that I know that this wild card is going to last me all the way until game week 20 plus, right? So the idea is if I keep Colwill as my 5th defender the whole time, I actually think that Chelsea are a pretty competent team. Yes, these fixtures are horrendous, but the whole point is you just own Colwill and then just play him 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I don't see myself, for example, transferring 4.5 defenders. There's just no point. Instead, actually, what I might do, as I've always said, is I will probably go out of Trippier on this fixture here, and then actually bring him back later. But the whole idea is if I go out of Trippier on game week 10 versus Wolves actually looks like a very competent team right now in terms of how many chances they can score, particularly at home. Good little opportunity, I would say, to maybe go off of Trippier and then upgrade Richarlison. Now, what's interesting as well, I think, is I have an opportunity as well to go off of Son, right? Because if you think about it, Son plus Richarlison could probably still be two transfers. Like, could I go Martinelli and yeah, I could definitely go Martinelli and Saka, because you know what? Saka will probably price fall today, right? So in 2 weeks' time, I think Son and Richarlison could be that. Now Richarlison could price fall as well. I'm sure he's probably close to a price fall. Oh no, he's actually not close to a price fall, so that's nice. But Son's close to another price rise, and then let's have a look at Saka, for example. So Saka's close to a price fall as well. So it could be the case that, yeah, Saka could be a drop. Now Mbumo's going to drop, but that doesn't affect me anymore. I no longer own Mbumo. Couple other drops here that are quite significant. And you know what? Worst case scenario, right? I've always got the opportunity to not go Martinelli, and I can always just go Bowen on game week 10, right? Because that's actually quite an interesting transfer to me. Like Bowen starting with Everton is a good little fixture there too. So I can actually keep Trippier in my team and kind of just keep this structure of, you know, Pedro Porro consistently starting games for me, because honestly, I don't see the reason to really bench Pedro Porro in any of these fixtures until game week 14 versus City, right? I'm very happy to play him versus most of these games. Yes, of course, probably not clean sheets, but he's actually an attacking player. So yeah, and Mbumo's good in terms of game week 9, but I know people want to get rid of him. I just sort of thought this was an opportunity to go Diaby as well. That's awesome, Meerkat. You missed the deadline as well. Good captaincy, though, of course. Neto got BL and assist. Thanks for the advice. Yeah, I'm happy that you got the Neto assist. To be honest, you know what's interesting is I think Hwang Hee-chan is actually a really good pick now, and we could probably continue to monitor him because he's actually cheaper, right? And look at the minutes for Hwang Hee-chan as well. If you see, since the Luton game, he's basically been getting more minutes. So 2 games back-to-back of 85, whereas at the start of the season, he was just getting 0 minutes whatsoever. So if we're going to get consistent 85 minutes out of Hwang Hee-chan, I think he's actually a better pick than Neto, which is crazy because Neto is already a very, very good pick. And I'll definitely add Hwang to the cheat sheet. But obviously, I could not expect that Hwang was actually going to suddenly play this many minutes. But he's played himself into the team as a starter effectively. He scored the most goals for them this season. I think he's got like 5 is a lot. Neto actually has 5 assists as well. Both of these picks are very, very good enablers. But I'm also very happy to sort of own Gordon as well, because I think, you know, when you own a player like Gordon, it's not a joke, but clean sheet odds are there for that 1 point. And he's got pretty decent and good expected goals and expected assists for a player who obviously doesn't have any set pieces. So I do quite like that as well. In terms of other messages in the chat, so Nate also says Cucurella could potentially play left back next week. I mean, I don't think so, because I think Colwill is super capable at left back, and right now what they're sort of doing is just Thiago Silva, you know, Disasi as well, right? So I don't really see it, if I'm honest. So I think you'll probably see Reece James come back, if anything. Sell Haaland and bring in Salah for -4. No, I think that's way too reactionary, mate. Ultimately, at the end of the day, look at this is Salah's best haul of the season, and what team was it against? Brighton away. And what team does Haaland have next? Brighton at home. We always knew that Arsenal was going to be a tough fixture. It was a tough fixture. It turned out to be a tough fixture. I don't think we need to overreact to it whatsoever. I'd be very happy owning Haaland next week and actually captaining Haaland, you know, just chill, is what I would say. Yep. It is what it is. So yeah, that's going to be my team next week. Obviously, I don't want to take this -4, so let's just reset that. In terms of picking my team, yeah, very, very happy with the setup of it. Archer even has Man United at home. I'm obviously making a joke about that, but look, that's better than Colwill Arsenal at home, Lamptey versus Man City away. So the bench is a bit weak next week, but I also think that all these players, you know, should come back. Richarlison's probably the only problem, and worst case scenario, I've always got a free transfer to move Richarlison away. And I don't see myself, for example, moving to a budget enabler, but definitely, for example, as I said, if I'm not super happy with Son, you know, going forwards, I actually think that Son could be an easy transfer as soon as maybe game week 10, right? Because so Crystal Palace, very, very good defense right now. So give him the Fulham game. Fulham seem like a team absolutely in tatters, but you know, these are all tough games coming up, right? Ultimately. So I think this is a good opportunity to maybe hop off of Son if you're actually happy to do so in game week 10. And I can always, you know, move away from Richarlison too. And as I said, transfer is probably going to be Saka or Odegaard. I don't know exactly what the issue is with Saka. We'll probably hear Arteta, you know, speak about the issue and vocalize what exactly is going on with Saka, because he wasn't in the squad today. But, you know, I expect, for example, Saka to be back in 2 weeks. So it is what it is. Son, Fulham, Salah, Everton, Haaland, Brighton, captaincy there. Yeah, I mean, I don't see myself putting it on Son, to be honest, but I think definitely there's a conversation between Salah and Haaland, and obviously a lot of people um are already on, for example, Salah only, right, and no Haaland. So very likely that we'll see continued really good Salah ownership, and a lot of people will flock towards Salah because when you look at total points in FPL, I think Salah is now just above Haaland as well in terms of total points. So a lot of people, for example, casual players, will react to that. And I get that as well. I do regret, obviously, not going Guehi for Colwell. So that's a huge, for example, 7 point gap, but it is what it is. Eric says, wish I'd follow you captaining Salah over Son. Yeah, I mean, I think I got lucky, right? Tottenham got a red card, so I think the best thing to do is not to overreact to that if you're a manager who's a little bit upset about the captaincy and how much that has a swing. We all know that captaincy at times, unfortunately, creates some really, really brutal consequences, and I think the best thing to do is not overreact. MFZ, I think it really depends on your team, whether you game week 10 or game week 19 wildcard. It really just depends on whether you think your team is any good. Lars says he has Højlund as a punt, tempting to captain him versus Chef. Look, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of captaining people who aren't on penalties. I think I've said it a lot of times, but I think Højlund obviously has a great fixture. Sheffield United look like a terrible team. I mean, if Fulham can score 3 goals versus them, even with how bad Man United are, I think you've got a good chance of getting something from Højlund. It's going to be a differential for sure, but yeah, I mean, up to you. As far as Evans, Maguire, Lindelof, Dalot, yeah, I mean, look, it's tough, isn't it, with that team? Obviously, Varane's playing there as well, but I mean, Onana as well with that mistake. Honestly, I don't think United were particularly bad on defense, but you've got to really say Onana really dropped the ball there. When to bring in Saka, Matoma, I think these are all game week 10 transfers, right? So, for example, that Richarlison spot can always be Matoma game week 10. You don't have to go Matoma. I think Saka is a little bit more essential. JT says, are there any specific things I think I should/could do when I'm at 11k ranked to not bottle it? What I would say, JT, is probably hold on to your chips, and look ahead in terms of planning. So when the blank game weeks and the double game weeks come around, be steady, be firm, plan ahead of time. So look towards the next 6 to 8 game weeks. Make sure you bring in transfers, and particularly players who have those double game weeks, as opposed to, for example, like what's a good idea of this? So when we look at fixtures, right, I was super reluctant to drop Julian Alvarez, and I dropped him because ultimately I had to make the decision in my head that I think Julian Alvarez really does have bad fixtures. Yes, they have enough depth now to sort of rotate him, particularly in game week 9 versus Brighton. Now, I was quite shocked to see him be an early sub today, but this is the landscape, right? So you have to sort of make do with that and just move on, is what I would say. So I think planning ahead, looking at fixtures, trying to make sure, like, don't just like hold a player just because you like them. Hold a player because you think the fixtures are still good and you think that they're still a really valid pick. Come on, you Gunners. Well done, Jay. Well done to all the Arsenal fans here in the chat for the win. Congratulations. If you guys are new here as well, would really appreciate if you guys could like and subscribe. And yeah, feel free to let me know what your game weeks are, what your plans are ahead. It's nice actually to hear in this review corner stream what people are doing. Painful loss. Are you a Man City fan? Everton will make it very hard for Liverpool to score. I mean, look, I think we can say that Everton at home is quite a good team, but then also I thought Everton at home were a fantastic team until I don't know what happened versus Luton when I owned Pickford, but I would say that was probably 10 to 15% of why I wildcarded this week. Conceding to Luton twice at home. I fair to say that I was actually quite on tilt from that. Got rid of Sterling for Son just for Sterling to do something. I think don't beat yourself up too much about it. It was unlucky that Luton actually, caused, for example, or Basuma himself caused Spurs to be on 10 men. So I would say don't beat yourself about Sterling to Son. I can understand for a lot of people who didn't own Salah that Son or even Fernandes were probably the better captaincy options this week if you didn't own Salah, and I can understand why you wanted to move off of Sterling. So I would say don't beat yourself up about it. Maybe one thing to revisit, obviously, is Sterling still had a good fixture. So when you compare, let's say, the way I like doing transfers sometimes, and to be fair, I did it as well, right? I wildcarded off of Sterling, but it's a little bit more justifiable, I guess, on the wildcard, just because long-term Sterling has bad fixtures. This was still a good Sterling fixture, but I was wildcarding. You can't always make sure that everyone has a bad game and a good game in terms of wildcard. Everyone's going to, for example, Haaland had a bad game, but I decided to wildcard, right? I wildcarded out of Julian Alvarez. And I wildcarded out of technically a good Pickford game as well, but it is what it is. I think you just move on. As I was saying, though, what is interesting is when you're, let's say, not wildcarding, I think a good piece of advice that I've generally found is that I don't like moving from a player who has a good game in hand into another player who has a better game in hand, per se. That's the only thing I would say. Kai says, I got to figure out what to do with Pope, Botman, Mateta. Yeah, I mean, Mateta is just simply not a great pick, especially with Eduard back in the team. You know, as they're probably back in a few weeks, and those two weeks is also going to be international break, which means increased time for Eze to come back to be a relevant player. I also think Mateta just, what's the value there? He's not even a penalty taker. As far as Pope and Botman, I think Pope is a fantastic pick. So is Botman. You know, you should be owning these two players next week as long as they're fit. So I wouldn't be too worried about owning the two of them. 0.2 in the bank. I think, yeah, Mateta is going to be the downgrade out, and hopefully you make some better transfers. I also think that rolling this next week could be quite interesting for you, just because sometimes it's better to have 2 free transfers, particularly if you, let's say, want to downgrade in one position and upgrade in another, so that you can avoid taking a hit. Alex says Bruno and Solanke or Diaby / Bowen Watkins. Honestly, I quite like Bowen and Watkins as a pairing. You know, I don't think it's particularly close, because I think the thing about Bruno and Solanke is Solanke's already had one good fixture gone, right? Whereas Bowen's actually closer to his good fixtures. And then actually the same case with Watkins, where he's closer to that Luton Town at home game. Yes, Bruno obviously has Luton Town, you know, deep into the distance. Not really, but I mean, you know, in the short term, obviously he's got it in game week 12, whereas Watkins has Luton at home in game week 10. So when I sort of prioritize who are the better picks in the short term, I definitely still think that the pair Diaby-Bowen is better. Or sorry, I mean Bowen-Watkins, or even Diaby-Watkins if you really want to double up on Aston Villa, which is what I've done. Best midfield transfer in for Sterling next week. Plan on using Wildcard. So, I mean, are we talking about around Sterling's price point? Someone in another league played Raya, White, Gabriel, and Havertz today. I mean, that's just mental. But you know what? Credit to him for getting those points. Look, ultimately, I think sometimes you've got to say decisions like that aren't too reasonable. So what I would probably say is you'd expect for that player to make bad decisions and have bad outcomes. Now, obviously, I would say playing all 3 of them is a bad decision. With a good outcome, right? So hopefully you'd say just playing the logic of fixtures will hopefully let you beat this person over 38 game weeks of time. Nice to see some interaction between Meerkat and Vijay in the chat. How many points did I get this game week? I got 65 points, so I'm right now top 80k in the world. Not too high up there, obviously, but finally a good game week for once. And honestly, a couple of things didn't go my way. Like Richarlison being an early sub was pretty bad. Like I'm not saying I expect Richarlison to finish the 2 chances that he completely messed up, but I'm just saying I would have liked for Richarlison to potentially just play until 60 minutes and then get me 2 extra points. That's it. Went no Haaland. I mean, I've got to be honest in terms of no Haaland and Haaland. Ultimately, I think both drafts have pretty much gotten the same amount of points. It really just depends on which defenders you play this week, right? Because I think the upside of, let's say, going no Haaland was you go Trent maybe as a pick, you go Trippier as well potentially, and you also go Fernandes, these sorts of picks. Fernandes didn't do particularly well. If you went for Bowen, I guess he blanked as well. If you went for Trent, he definitely blanked. If you went for Trippier, he did well. But I mean, ultimately, I'm sitting here with a Trippier in my team. Now, obviously, I don't have Maddison. But I was trying to say as well, I think part of the defender gamble, let's say if you went for Guehi and played Guehi as well in a no Haaland draft, that could have been quite impactful. But the big hitters weren't particularly good. For example, Alvarez as well, another blank, and also in an early rotation, which is tough. When you set to plan for future game weeks and double game weeks, is there something more to it and just planning transfers to accommodate? Yeah, I think, JT, it's about, you know, in the future, we won't know for certain when the double game weeks fall. So, for example, I can tell you right now that there is very likely to be a double game week in double game week 20. I'm sorry, calling it double game week 20, but it's not officially confirmed. But there's a 90% chance, at least per Ben Crellin, that there's a fixture there. So the whole idea is that you know that there's going to be a blank in the future when Brentford don't play Man City. So your Brentford and Man City players do not play in game week 18. And then on the other hand, they actually play again. And that fixture gets rescheduled onto game week 20. So that means that's a Haaland double game week, for example. So on weeks like that, that's where I would say, you know, have a look into planning around that. For example, like maybe you would want to save a transfer in game week 19 so that you can have 2 free transfers for game week 20. Haaland price might fall, but yeah, it doesn't really matter, does it? Do you think without KDB, it's not worth? I don't think it's about KDB at all, honestly. I think the reality is he's been really unclinical this season, and it is what it is. But I think when you look at the fixtures and you want to and you're holding him and you see captaincy opportunities, I think Haaland is very good. For example, next week, like next week is Brighton at home. That's a fantastic fixture, and we know City are always a better attacking team at home. I do think KDB is impactful in terms of, can they score from nothing, right? That sort of element of City where are they able to sort of create something out of nothing from KDB magic? Yes, of course, that's lost. But Haaland has actually had plenty of opportunities to do well. And yeah, ultimately versus Brighton, I think Haaland, I would love to have Haaland there, but also I'll be, keenly sort of enjoying Salah ownership in Gameweek 9. Jamajkovic says, got rid of Haaland for Salah and you captained him. Well done. For Gameweek 9, can you bring him back by -4? Honestly, I would probably just go for a Salah captaincy next week. I don't see the need to really -4 back into Haaland. I think that's a little bit too excessive for me. Well played to you as well, Henry. How are you doing so far? 60 points. You changed your captain to Salah last minute when you told me to do so. Yeah, you're welcome, Vedant. I'm really happy for you that it worked out well. Yeah, I mean, I decided to captain Salah because I just didn't think Son was going to play that many minutes. Now, obviously, part of that was luck because of the red card, but another part of that too is theoretically speaking, which among the Chelsea attackers would you captain? I think I would actually always captain Sterling because even though he's not on penalties, the big thing is he's got really good minutes, right? And he is still the most lethal attacker in that team. And obviously, you get additional points for clean sheets and goals scored as a midfielder. So I would see Sterling as the option. Whereas, for example, if Jackson was a penalty taker, that would change my mind a little bit. But Jackson's minutes are also maybe non-guaranteed. Like now you've got Broja back in the team. He can be subbed off. You have a bit more depth in the wing positions too. Who knows? And Kunku's coming back as well. So yeah, just going forwards, I'd say, Sterling is probably the best shout. But Cole Palmer has obviously emerged as one of the best options. Like if we're thinking about future wildcards and who we want to wildcard into, I think Cole Palmer is a really nice pick. I think obviously he's got, it's a little bit of an injury concern. Hwang is interesting. Hee-chan, that is. Neto is good. Gordon is good. Gibbs-White is still okay. I don't love Gibbs-White, but he's a penalty taker. Are United players worth investing in? Honestly, I was thinking about this on my wild card. There was a chance where I was going to actually play Dallo, but then I decided, why not downgrade Maddison into Richarlison and just go Trippier instead? And it's been -1 so far. I think Trippier got 6 points, Richarlison got 1, Dallo got 1 point, 2 points, and Maddison got 6. I'm not too sad that I played Trippier because at the end of the day, hopefully Richarlison starts again, still has a good fixture in hand, and then Trippier has a much better fixture than Dallo anyways in Gameweek 9. I know obviously Dallo has Sheffield United away, but it's not close because the actual quality of the defenses themselves are very different. And then also Crystal Palace with no Eze just seem like a team that literally can't even muster up an attack, right? It's like Ayew, it's Edouard and Mateta. It's not that inspirational. So I would really love to have Trippier next week, if anything. Arsenal really clean sheet whenever they want to. I think people should not overplay the narrative about, Gabriel at home or Arsenal at home versus away. At the end of the day, Arsenal are very, very good defense. So are Newcastle. So I'd probably much rather invest into City, Arsenal, Newcastle defense. The thing is with the Arsenal defenders, there's a little bit more upside with the attack, I guess, compared to City, just based on price. And then also when you look at Newcastle as well, same sort of logic there. If Dan Burn, the center back for Newcastle, is 4.5 or 4.6, and then actually on the other side, you've got City, who are a better defensive team, but then Ruben Dias costs 5.5, or Guardiola continues to rotate with Ake. It's tough, right, to justify that. Walker's an interesting pick, though, I would say. But obviously really nice that at least one side lost their clean sheet today. I would have to be honest and say that. As far as other sort of mentions, Price is Palmer now. Chelsea has tough fixtures, but I think the thing is at 4.9, you're not really missing out too much because, for example, when you compare Gordon to Palmer, you save 0.7, right? So maybe that 0.7 can actually upgrade you in another position, and actually having a penalty taker at 4.9 is sort of insane, right? For example, like even Andreas, who's got a terrible fixture run, he's a penalty taker, but actually his minutes aren't particularly good, and then also the team he plays in isn't particularly good, but he's still done well, for example. Slow sort of ticks of points like here and there. who am I benching game week 9? It's pretty simple, actually. I'll bench Archer, Colwell, and Lamptey in that order. So I'm already set up for game week 9, ready for the flag to be removed from Gordon, and we're back in business. What would be your game week 10 wildcard if I still had it? I probably would have to genuinely think about whether I want to go into Salah, because it's like 3 weeks of Salah, right? Game week 10. It feels a little bit too late, because if you go, I mean, yes, of course, you got fantastic fixtures: Nottingham Forest at home, Luton at home, so Luton away. But then actually, as soon as game week 12, it's bad, and then it's bad, and then, I mean, sorry, Brentford's not that bad, but I think Brentford are okay at defense, and then Fulham's obviously great. Sheffield United is nice, but it's a tough one, I think, because it also depends on around this time. What's interesting is actually Arsenal will have good fixtures. So it's not only about Salah versus Salah plus Haaland, but it's also about what kind of team can you create with the Arsenal players coming back into your team. Why I decided to game week 8 and not go with any Arsenal players is because the two fixtures are City and Chelsea. You could see how tough it was for even Arsenal to get a good attack off. And let's be honest, that Martinelli goal was a little bit jammy, but deserved, obviously. It's not like City created amazing chances. The best chance fell to Ake, who completely ruined the Haaland assist. But you kind of get what I'm trying to say, I hope. So the idea here, as I'm trying to discuss this through, is in game week 10, you probably actually want triple Arsenal. I know they've got Newcastle right after that, and who knows, we might still rate Newcastle superbly. So it might be the case that you go for Salah, Haaland, but then I also question, how can you actually afford all the picks that you want? For example, I probably want Saka, I probably want Martinelli, I probably want Zinchenko or Gabriel, and it's tough. You probably still have to continue with Turner Areola as your keeper pair, or even a 3.9 keeper and Areola, because obviously by game week 10 you don't really need a Turner anymore, right? Because Turner doesn't have any good fixtures after that. Like, for the most part here, you're not actually going to play Turner any of these fixtures, maybe except for like this Fulham game here, because when you compare it to, let's say, I mean, Areola, that's the only fixture where I would say it calls out as a really bad one in terms of this keeper rotation. And Turner might not even keep his spot, but I mean, he kept a clean sheet last week, so we feel like his spot is relatively safe. And maybe that 0.1, just for the chance of actually better fixtures, sometimes is good. So yeah, that's one thing that we can think about. Obviously, as I said, I will be playing Turner next week. And yeah, I mean, you might not want Son in game week 10 wildcard, so maybe let's just drop Son. Let's go Martinelli for fun. Martinelli could be Bowen as well, keep in mind. Depends on Diaby's fitness, so there's that as well. But if I went for a Salah Haaland draft, I'd probably still go Watkins. Probably drop Son for Saka. Saka might fall as well. Pedro Porro, I might not keep him, if I'm honest. I think I would just change him for Zinchenko, just because the upside of Fulham and Luton are gone. Trippier, let's try and keep him. Gabriel, not an option here. Lamptey, we might not keep him as well, just because this could be Taylor in the future. So let's just go with Taylor for now. Cash, we probably have to keep him, if I'm honest. You still have basically 5 fixtures that are really good back to back, and then you can think about dropping Cash then. I mean, maybe you could go Dallo, because on game week 10 you bench Dallo, but then you can actually have Fulham, Luton, Everton. Not bad fixtures. Maybe you don't go Dallo. Who knows? It depends on whether United actually look like a competent football team by then. Let's just maybe go Gabriel to save a bit of money. You could go Guehi as well, I would say, because Guehi has good fixtures, right? Guehi has, yeah, I mean, good fixtures, 11, 12, 13. Can play him 15 again. So I'd probably go Guehi. I think this is sort of like a team that I kind of like, but then I would probably say I really want to go Martinelli or something like that. Maybe you can go for Palmer as well, as I said, who can just sort of play, but that probably means that you need a deeper bench. I'm just trying to see if I can squeeze into Martinelli here, try go for a little bit more of an expensive midfield. It's tough though, isn't it? So keeping Trippier as well in this draft structure. So I think that's tough if we were to do like a game week 10 wildcard. But I think Bowen's a consideration. I mean, Palmer, I guess you could actually play him versus Brentford. You definitely can't play him until literally game week 16. So it's kind of tough there. Maybe you have to kind of stretch towards, I think He-Chan's interesting, right? Because if you go He-Chan, you can actually, feels like the fixtures are a little bit nicer. It's like AB-ish. Not too bad as well. Chan's an option. Maybe you actually have Trippier for cheaper. So maybe that's an option for you as well. I think 4 defenders is good to go. Archer is quite nice bench coverage. This can always be Mubama as well if we think our bench is strong enough. It probably isn't, if I'm honest. But who knows? Saka could fall by then. That could be one thing. Martinelli, I'm not. I think he's actually going to avoid the price fall because he actually played today and scored. So very unlikely that he falls. But something like this could be interesting. And who knows? As I said, if Turner gets benched, you can always just go like Strakosha or something like that, right? And just 3.9, and you could just live with that. How was my game week 8? It was very good, thank you. So this was my live team in terms of game week 8. Finally shot back up to the top 100k. So I'm pretty happy with that, fortunately. And yeah, I mean, we're back in the 80k for now. Hopefully life, continues as it is. You're thinking a Haaland less wildcard in game week 10 is the play. I think, it's very valid as a strategy. I probably wouldn't do it. I think it depends on transfer value as well. If you have low transfer value, it's very hard to avoid both of them. Yeah. Would you sell Haaland for Watkins? I would only sell him for Watkins if I knew I was getting Salah in exchange. Is Lascelles a good shout? I don't think so, because Botman should be coming back very, very soon, and then Lascelles will just be back on the bench forever. Whereas the thing with Lamptey, at least, is you're sort of gambling that he starts in the future, because Lamptey has actually been praised by Roberto De Zerbi quite a lot, and there could be a chance, obviously, that you can benefit from being a Lamptey owner in the future. So I don't think I'd worry too much. Would you? But okay, and you already have Salah. I mean, I probably wouldn't do that then, in that situation. So that's what I would say. Any sort of other... I mean, let's also review this game week as well, right? So also, yeah, in terms of my team, obviously the live rank hasn't updated. Flecken had an illness. That's why he missed out on the fixture, so I wouldn't worry too much about Flecken. I only mentioned Strakosha because he's 3.9. Now, as far as the game week, obviously Richarlison went poorly. I think that was the only thing that went poorly, because Diaby, as I said, I sort of brought him in as a future transfer. I'm hoping, obviously, over the international break that he gets back to full fitness, and then he can actually be really, really useful for me from West Ham, Luton, Nottingham Forest, Fulham, basically 4 fixtures in a row. Watkins, the same sort of logic there. Trippier, just an amazing pick. I'm actually starting to consider whether I want to keep Trippier long term. Colwill, he's going to be useless to me except for Game Week 10, and then I'm actually going to get him back in the team and be useful for me Game Week 16 plus. So he's basically my 4th defender for the time being. And that's fine, because actually Cash is going to play for us until Game Week 14. Porro is also going to play for us until Game Week 13, basically. Maybe not 13 even, but it's still a home fixture, so not too bad. Trippier, I mean, you can actually pretty much play him through all of these fixtures, I would say. Because I would still say that Arsenal are probably going to struggle to actually... No, I mean, I know I can go for Arsenal defense. So one thing I can obviously do is I can always just go Colwill out, I suppose. But I think I'd probably go versus Sheffield United for Arsenal attackers. I could go for Zinchenko Gabriel, and I could move away from Pedro Porro then. That's not a bad option as well. But I mean, I think that's a clean sheet nailed for Porro versus Palace, so I can't see myself doing that. I just need a 3rd defender on Game Week 10. I think Trippier is actually very useful, so I'm happy with, Cash, Trippier, Porro as well. And so in that week, I think instead what I would just need is actually just 2 transfers in the midfield position, which would be around, Richarlison and Son. And then after that, in this game week here, in Game Week 11, I can think about maybe going out of Trippier potentially, but I probably won't do it. I think reassessing right now. Ben White is on my watch list. I still think I'd probably rather just go Zinchenko Gabriel, because it just saves more money. I think Ben White is quite expensive at 5.6. That's really, really expensive. Considering that he doesn't have, for example, the sort of quality of expected goal involvement that someone like a Trippier has, I just think I'd avoid it. I mean, look at the expected goal involvement as well when you compare the two. So, I mean, Trippier effectively has double. And then also the difference in price is only 1.2. Yeah, Trippier can do well. I think Trippier can actually last me this entire run here, up until Game Week 20. But you might even keep him, for the rest of the season. Should I do Son to Saka next game? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, Son's got a great fixture versus Fulham, so there's absolutely no reason to do it. But yeah, as I said, Son and Richarlison probably out in Game Week 10, and that's it. Those are my transfer plans, because everyone in Game Week 10 in my team has a good fixture. Except for Haaland, but he's also versus United, which I have no confidence in United, and he'll actually probably do well there. Would I roll or sell to Gordon? No, I would just keep James Ward-Prowse. He's got better fixtures. I mean, he's probably a better pick than Gordon, but he's more expensive. That's why I didn't go for James Ward-Prowse. And also, I mean, I just don't believe Newcastle and Aston Villa are good fixtures. That's why I didn't go for James Ward-Prowse, and that's why I didn't go for Bowen. That's pretty much it. Okay, and that's going to be, I think, it in terms of my review of my team. In terms of the fixtures, I mean, if we want to recap here, let's just go back to and recap. I think obviously Spurs unlucky. Richarlison had two great chances. Son had okay chances, not the best. Maddison as well, not exactly the best game for him either. I think obviously he was incredible in terms of creating that opportunity where Van de Ven scored, but for the rest of the game, not at his absolute best, I would say. Still a very, very good pick for Fulham, and ultimately he's a key creator. So obviously we saw that in display, but the red card completely ruined the game and the momentum for Spurs. Burnley, Chelsea. Once again, I think we've been saying actually from Game Week 5 that Chelsea is actually a very good team. And the difference between Chelsea and United is even though United and Chelsea don't have good results, is the difference is that Chelsea have actually been performing on underlying data like a good team. So we have better expectations for them. So not surprised that they completely obliterated Burnley. And good to see Sterling had a good performance. I've been backing Sterling for a long time. I'm pretty sad I actually missed out on his points, but I'm actually happier, of course, that I Salah captained this week with my wild card. So I'm happy either way. And anyways, congrats to people who held on to Sterling, but still fixtures are getting very, very tough for Chelsea, so it's hard to sort of justify keeping them. As far as a team like Burnley, I think we're starting to see obviously the underlying data from their defense sort of unravel, and that makes sense because they're playing tougher teams back to back. And you know, it's very clear now that all the promoted teams are very bad. But I would also put Bournemouth and Fulham in that category. They're also very comfortably poor teams. Now, Fulham obviously also beat Sheffield United. I don't think it was that convincing a result because obviously there was a late winner there with two. And then obviously a significant injury from Sheffield United. But as I said, Sheffield United actually one of the worst attacks, and the fact that actually Fulham conceded versus that already shows that Fulham probably one of the most overrated defenses. I know Leno has been fantastic in terms of shot stopping, but this is the reality with Fulham, right? They're not a particularly good team. I think we said it last week where the first 45 minutes versus Chelsea was shambolic. I know there was an own goal as well, but hey, it is what it is. Everton, Bournemouth. Look, Everton have been performing like a basically I would say a team around that range of let's say 8th, 12th this season, and they're definitely not, for example, what I would call a relegation side. So it's actually good to see them actually perform well with a good result, not just on underlying data, but just in terms of outcome. We're starting to see obviously that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is getting consistent starts. Doucouré obviously playing in an advanced role. So yes, obviously these two sort of players are options, but the fixtures aren't amazing for Everton. So I'd be concerned. Bournemouth, as I said, they're a particularly poor team, but then from an FPL point of view, I think the only serious pick is Solanke, and I don't think that's really changed. He still has really two good home fixtures in hand, so I wouldn't be worried. United, Brentford, just talking about that 2-1. I mean, look, they should not really have conceded that chance. That was really just down to Onana, who somehow found a way to not save a very easy savable shot from Jensen. And I think Jensen is definitely an overrated FPL pick, but he can't stop scoring. So what can I say? I don't think I back Jensen as an option. I certainly don't back him over Mbumo. But he's doing the business. And I would say if you own Jensen, for example, it's a case of you probably getting a little bit luckier than, let's say, going for a more consistent pick and open play. But I can understand. With United, obviously, the concern is they are literally conceding some of the worst goals. They are conceding to some of the worst offensive teams, and they have a lot of injuries, right? A lot of rotation, a lot of people changing positions week to week. You know, Amrabat playing different roles, playing fullback at times, McTominay bailing them out, Maguire actually performing okay in the end. And yeah, I think I don't have the same faith in United's attack, which is why I wildcarded in the first place. So my opinions on them are exactly the same. As far as Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, I would have to say that these are both teams that do not inspire me whatsoever in attack. Crystal Palace mostly because of the Eze injury. However, obviously we can't deny the fact that Crystal Palace are very, very comfortably top 5, top 6 defense, and there's literally not a single problem wrong with them. I think Johnston, Guehi, Anderson, all good picks. I would always just pick the cheapest option because, as I said last week, there's nothing special about Anderson. Guehi is just as good of a pick, so just save yourself some money there. Even Mitchell at one point was close to triple bonus points if I'm wrong. Brighton versus Liverpool. And sorry, Nottingham Forest, obviously Gibbs White playing 90 minutes is nice because obviously he had a surprise benching the previous week. But beyond that, I mean, I don't really see any options for Nottingham Forest. I'd say obviously keep Turner if you own him. Brighton versus Liverpool, look, situation where I would say both teams are great offenses. Liverpool made a lot of key mistakes at the second half of the game, and Brighton obviously took that opportunity to sort of claw themselves back into the game. Brighton probably, you know, on the quality of chances, should have actually won 3-2 with the João Pedro goal. What I would say, though, is I'm not really concerned about Liverpool. I think one of the things, too, that you need to remember about this Liverpool team is that they have, first of all, Gakpo out and 2 suspensions, right, that are sort of holding their firepower back. they've been always fantastic when Jota comes on as a super sub, or vice versa with Darwin as a super sub. Same with Gakpo, same with let's say even Curtis Jones, who's obviously a little bit more midfield depth. McAllister, for example, is making a lot of mistakes. I mean, he could have been taken off, right? So these are instances where I would say Liverpool with a stronger bench could have also found themselves better chances. Salah, scored a brace and actually probably had opportunities to score a hat trick, not necessarily in terms of actual chances that he took, but just in terms of how the plays unfolded. With this Brighton team, it's once again the case that all of them are capable of a haul at any time, but I think Mitoma is still the most consistent just because of minutes. And unfortunately, with the defensive options, their defense continues to look worse and worse, and the keepers are continuing to put out really, really bad performances each week. As far as Newcastle, West Ham, I think we obviously need to monitor, for example, it's always a case of, let's say, how is Wilson doing in terms of fitness? How is Isaac doing in terms of fitness? And who's playing the Champions League game? Who's playing the EFL Cup game? Because remember, they beat City in the EFL Cup, so they're still in that competition. And I think they're still in the FA Cup, unless I'm wrong. And so that's obviously going to impact, for example, their future fitness. And it's very tough to, for example, pick between Isaac and Wilson. One of them can actually get a brace one week and then get benched the next. So it's quite tough from an FPL point of view to justify going for them. I would actually just think about options like Gordon. Almiron, I think, plays less minutes, but he's a starter. I just like Gordon the most just in terms of price point. And ultimately, I think the picks that I've always liked are Trippier or either Botman or Burn, just because I don't think Shar is worth the money. He takes a lot of shots. He scored a screamer versus PSG. But is it worth, the additional 0.4, 0.5 that you can save? Honestly, I don't think so, because right now they have so many better players in terms of attacking positions. They have much more depth. He probably doesn't need to be taking that many shots. And you can see this season, he's not taken as many shots as he did in the previous one. That's maybe a tactical adjustment. West Ham, very, very good team. Nice to see Kudus score a goal. And that's obviously another question. Is there going to be a little bit of rotation in the future? Will we see Jared Bowen, center forward? And will we see Kudus back in the team, for example, as a starter? I don't know if that's the case, but these are things to think about. Bowen clearly has the best underlying play data and open play data. James Ward-Prowse is sort of a safe pick in the sense that I don't think his ceiling is like sky high, but obviously there will be some crazy games where James Ward-Prowse, might actually be a penalty taker. I'm not really sure, but in general, he's got set pieces. There will be games where, things line up and James Ward-Prowse can get double assists. His open play data is also better in terms of expected goals, so he's an okay pick, but still Aston Villa next, not that concerned about having to move immediately into a West Ham pick. But beyond those two picks, nothing really to shout about. Ariel is nice. I know Soufal has actually been starting a lot of games, so Soufal's an interesting pick going forwards. Wolves, Aston Villa, nothing really to say here. I've mentioned that Neto has been a great pick all this time, but as I said, because Hwang Hee-chan is getting a lot more minutes going forwards, I think Hwang Hee-chan at 5.4 is also one of those players where if you're trying to create, let's say, a Salah plus Haaland draft going forwards, he's a good pick, and he could actually replace even Neto because he's more of a goal scorer. Aston Villa, let's see. I think they're just a good team, and overall, I think the three best picks are very clear. It's Cash, it's Diaby, and it's Watkins. But Diaby's minutes might have to be managed. I just think with international break, he's a good pick. Douglas Luiz not bad as a penalty taker. Vedant says, why do I have free Chelsea in the first place? I don't even know what that question means. First of all, you're looking at Sterling, and he's done fantastic. And then also Chelsea have 3 clean sheets, which is actually really good in terms of the rest of the league and the competition there. So if all my Chelsea players actually played in those fixtures, for example, if Sterling wasn't sick in training, he probably could have actually got 1 goal, 1 assist versus Fulham. And even if I kept him this week, if I rolled my transfer, for example, and didn't wildcard, not roll my transfer, but just played on without a wildcard, I would have enjoyed 16 points from Sterling. So, they're very comfortably good picks, and Sterling's at 7.0 compared to, let's say, Rashford, who is not even playing, 80 minutes of football a match at 8.4, 8.5, 8.6. And Fernandes obviously is the only interesting pick. But yeah, Sterling has only performed versus relegation fodder, but what is the point of that though? Like, you still play relegation fodder when you play in the Premier League, right? So I'm not sure what the point or the argument is there. Like, we picked Sterling because he was playing against relegation fodder, not because he's performing versus good teams. For example, Haaland blanked today versus an Arsenal team. Are we going to say that Haaland performs poorly versus bad teams? No, you're always going to perform worse versus bad teams. That's just the logic of good defenses and bad defenses. So I think when you pick Sterling for a fixture run, let's say game weeks 3 to 8, perfectly justified to keep him. And look at the Chelsea team as well from a defensive point of view. So they also conceded a goal to Aston Villa only because of the red card as well, 10 versus 11. I agree, but the question was, why do I have 3 Chelsea in the first place? Not why do I have triple Chelsea going forwards? That's my point. So you're sort of arguing on a different line to what I am, if that makes sense. I agree with you. Sterling's a sell next week. I don't think Sterling is, for example, a keep. But is he a bad pick? Like, not at all. For example, Bowen, I mean, just blank today. And this is the reality with tough fixtures. Yes, of course, he can score versus Liverpool, but it's not like I would give him the chance to score every week. He also blanked for City. So, Bowen's a very good pick Game Week 10 onwards. But with Sterling, I would say he'd probably come back into my team around Game Week 15. Theodore, hi Fran, Game Week saved by Salah captaincy choice. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Theodore. And well done on captaining Salah. What is your opinion on Newcastle defenders? I think, honestly, I would only really own Trippier for the time being. I don't really see the point in doubling up for now. I think if you've enjoyed the double up and you own the double up, then that's fine. You can probably keep them. They could be like, for example, Burn could be a transfer out in Game Week 11, or you can keep him in the team because, yes, of course, at the end of the day, as I say, they're a top 3 defense. Ad says, well done on the Salah captaincy. Guess when he's playing Game Week 9, first kickoff. I will be captaining Haaland 100% unless there's something crazy in terms of news that could happen. Nishan says, should I get Kulusevski? I don't like Kulusevski at all. I would probably go Gordon or Hwang Hee-chan. I'd be heavily backing Wolves away to Bournemouth in Game Week 9. Also, I'd be backing Newcastle home to Palace. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle is fantastic in Game Week 10. So, for example, if you own the double defense, do not sell them now. Sell them after the Palace game because Palace literally cannot muster up a competent offense right now without Eze. So, yeah, I agree with that entirely. But yeah, going back to the point in terms of who's a good pick and who's a bad pick. I mean, there are some people who are always going to be a good pick. Like, I think Haaland is always technically a good pick. But the question, of course, is, for a lot of other assets in the game, the reality is they're quite fixture dependent and fixture run dependent. So, whilst triple Chelsea was super justifiable, I think we've also had bad luck in terms of, Gusto red cards, Chilwell getting out of the team. But that's also... for example, I moved out of Chilwell as soon as I saw the first benching because I knew he wasn't really part of Poch's first team sort of 11 plans. And I was very happy that I moved to Trippier. And then actually he got benched another week where some managers, were a little bit later to react to that first initial benching. Kai says, I want your thoughts on this, Fran. I roll Game Week 9, Game Week 10, you got 2 free transfers. You do Mbumo to Palmer. That leaves me with 1.9 in the bank. I'm not sure about Palmer in terms of Game Week 10. As I said, I think it works if you're wildcarding right into Palmer because Palmer could just be a bench option and then you can actually just sort of play 4-4-2 a lot of weeks. But as I'm trying to say, it really depends on whether you have a deep bench to accommodate for Palmer when he has bad fixtures. So that's the first thing I would say. And then going back to the general transfer, I think if you go upgrade Edouard 6.8 million in the bank, I actually think that's still not enough, right? Because there's no strikers right now in Game Week 10 that I actually like who are worth 6.8 million. So I still think you need to stretch your budget a bit further to get a real striker at 6.8 million, or else you're actually better off playing a 4-5-1. Ad says you got 3. Yeah, I mean, we all have 3 solid captaincy choices. I think Haaland, Salah, Son is how I would prioritize them. Because right now with Son, he's going to play 90 minutes each in the international fixtures. So it's very tough. It's very tough. Right now, in terms of form, confidence, and consistency, Watkins and Salah elite right now. I agree with that, and that's why they're in my team. But one thing I have to say, obviously, is Haaland is still playing versus a very, very poor Brighton defense. So that's why I'm probably going to captain Haaland next week. When it comes to Game Week 10, I mean, that's probably going to be a Salah or Watkins captaincy. So that's an interesting sort of point to think about, too. Mr. Blanky says, sell Haaland and bring in Salah for -4. I wouldn't do that personally. Haaland's going to be my captain next week. Game Week 11, Crystal Palace with 3 really good fixtures. Yep, I'm in agreement with you there. I mean, three chances where you can actually say clean sheets are definitely on the cards, per se. And maybe I'll have to sort of adjust for that by then. We'll see. Because what I'm trying to think is if I can squeeze and be a little bit cheeky, I could actually get Lamptey at home versus Fulham. That was sort of the plan with the draft here. Because if I can get a cheeky little Lamptey fixture, that would be really nice. What are your thoughts on Richarlison? What's the plan with him going forward? He's going to be a transfer out for me in Game Week 10. You ranked in the top 64K 54 this week. Awesome, Konzo. Well done. But yeah, I think I'm probably going to close the stream in a little bit. I don't know if you guys have any other sort of major overarching questions. Do you think Estupiñán will drop again during the break? I think he might drop once. I'm not really sure about that, to be honest. I think he might not drop again. What do you do with Awani? Should I just keep him until he recovers? No, I think you should honestly... I mean, he might even price fall, so I'd probably actually think about moving Awani out with a little bit more money in the bank. I would try stretch to Watkins as soon as possible. So if, for example, you can't afford Watkins in Game Week 9, although what I would probably do is actually save until Game Week 10 and then actually make a double transfer so that you can actually upgrade Awani into Watkins in Game Week 10 and actually get that Luton at home fixture. Marcus Nelson says double Arsenal attackers. Game week 10 doesn't look good versus Newcastle. Yeah, but it's not just about that though, right? Because for example, if you own double Arsenal attack, the point is you're going to own them for the next few weeks, if that makes sense. So I'm very happy and comfortable owning Martinelli versus, let's say, Newcastle away, just because I know after that it's Burnley, it's Brentford, it's Wolves, it's Luton. Like, how could you not pass up that opportunity? It's basically just one bad fixture in 5. I mean, my logic for keeping Bruno and Rashford all this time was actually so I had one bad fixture in Game Week 10. But the reality is they're also a really bad offensive team, so I have no faith in them. Whereas with Arsenal, they're a good offensive team. Their only tough fixture is this Newcastle game. So happy to enjoy Sheffield United at home, Burnley at home, Brentford away, Wolves at home, Luton away. Like, you just can't pass up on that. So that's why I think, when we look at the short term or the medium term, double Arsenal midfielder is very, very logical. You could obviously go for them in Game Week 12. I'm not saying you need to go for all two of them as soon as possible. But I think in my position as well, it might be the case that since obviously, let's say Crystal Palace are quite a good defense, Chelsea are also quite a good defense, that I might probably just sidestep Son and Richarlison. And I have to say the Spurs attack is not the same quality as the Arsenal attack too. Will Man City play better now with Rodri back from suspension? I mean, you'd have to imagine so. I can't see any reason why they would play any worse. I mean, he's probably their second or first, crucial player. So, yeah. I mean, with Rodri and Man City, I don't think you can say that he improves the attack per se, but just in terms of possession, control, all these sorts of things, making sure that they're much more precise, efficient with their passes in terms of build up too. There's a huge difference there. But keep in mind also that I think Rodri, it's a 3-match suspension though, no? So isn't Rodri going to miss out the Brighton game as well? So they've only played 2 fixtures as far as I'm aware. Or does he also serve one of the suspensions within the EFL Cup game? When is Rodri back, actually? I think they would just update that, wouldn't they? Oh, actually, Rodri is back. That's my bad. That's actually my mistake. I mean, even better, and probably why I'd enjoy Haaland captaincy a little bit more. You captain Maddison instead of Son. You never really considered captaining Salah, so not worried about that. Fair enough. Good choice, I guess, in terms of Maddison and Son, at least. Hi, Ben Taylor. How are you doing? That TPS player says, will Man City player... Oh, I've already asked that question, sorry. Do you think Botman will be back for Game Week 9? I think he should be, but obviously I can't confirm that. Eddie Howe has to confirm that in 2 weeks' time. Saka for Son, Game Week 10 viable? I think that's very viable. EFL counts. Yep. Yeah, EFL count. EFL Cup does indeed count. We just checked that. So Rodri will be back versus Brighton. Should I wildcard if I have 3 Chelsea, 2 Luton assets, Saka and Akanji? I would consider it. Honestly, I would consider it. I would also have to ask the question of who else do you have in your team? Do you have some nice do you have some nice Spurs assets who've got fixtures next? Do you have Salah in your team already? What is your defense looking like outside of, let's say, Akanji? But presuming that you, let's say, have Morris, that you have players like Kabore, I would generally consider a wildcard. They should invite you onto Sky Sports as an expert. Your tips and advice have been invaluable. I mean, I'd happily accept an invite whenever they want me to do that. But I have not been invited so far. Is it too late to buy Trippier? I don't think so. I think this is a great week to buy Trippier once again. This is a fantastic fixture opportunity to jump onto Trippier. You know what, guys? I have to actually admit that I made a huge mistake during the wild card. And don't laugh at me, okay? But I jumped onto Maddison thinking that I would definitely go Maddison. But then in the final day, I decided that I wanted to go Richarlison Trippier. And so I lost the price. I lost my value in Trippier, which was 6.6. And I do feel like a little bit of an idiot because I would now be staring at my team with 0.4 million in the bank and I'd be a little bit happier. But instead, I've actually got Trippier at 6.8. So that was my one mistake during the wild card. Feel free to laugh at me, but yeah, that was it. And that was pretty tough. Pretty tough to look at, just a classic FPL L that I have to hold. Konzo says, I have 0.0 in the bank with Saka to Son Game Week 10 allow me to go Gordon to Matoma. I think that's a fantastic move. Does having lots of players at home help? 100%. One simple, you got me 9 points saying play. Awesome, Ben. That's just the power of saying play Guehi. Well done. My one mistake was forgetting to start turnover arrow. Oh no, that's like a 5-point difference. Sorry about that, Henry. We would actually be on the same amount of points right now, wouldn't we, Henry? Because you said 60. But yeah, I'm glad that you got your Guehi points, Ben. I wish I actually played Guehi as well instead of Colwill. But now I have to stare at Colwill for the next 7 weeks. Should I get Robertson, Darwin, and Salah? No, I don't think so. I don't think any of them are essential except for Salah. And I wouldn't even call Salah essential. I think if you feel like you've got a well-rounded draft, if you have some Arsenal attackers that you want to stay and keep in your team, if you've got Trippier, players like that, I wouldn't say any of them are essential. I don't think Darwin excuse me, Darwin's going to have limited minutes, right? Jota's back in the team. Gakpo's out of his cast. He's going to come back into the team. And Darwin's coming off an international break where he always plays and comes back with a little bit of fatigue. And there's a very, very short overlay between his last game in Uruguay and him coming back to game week 9 playing for Liverpool on the first fixture of the week. So that's not enough, I would say, to actually justify going for Darwin, in my opinion. I think Darwin, if you wanted to punt on him starting this week, fair enough, that was a good play, but I would not be going for Darwin. And with Robertson, it really depends. Once again, like, are you dropping Haaland in this situation? If you're not, maybe Robertson could be interesting, but I still think, for example, Trippier is better than Robertson. Patrick says, should we consider selling Son as he seems inconsistent? I don't think so, right? Because, okay, if someone's inconsistent, but on every other week they can score a brace or a hat-trick, I don't mind that. You know, FPL is a 38-game game. You're not owning Son for 1 week. Marcus says, rank these 4 players from game week 10. Martinelli, Bowen, Mitoma, Diaby, Foden, ignoring cost. Martinelli, Bowen, Mitoma, Diaby, I would say. If I want to go 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, who should I have as third striker? I have Watkins and Alvarez other than Haaland. By the way, I totally recognize that I've literally just... And sorry, Foden's last. I would say Mitoma and Diaby are equal. Sorry. If I want to go 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, who should I have as third striker? You've got Watkins and Alvarez other than Haaland. So are you saying you don't want to go Haaland? Is that what you're saying? If you can let me know, then I'm happy to sort of accommodate for you. By the way, guys, I think I've streamed for almost 1 hour. So I think what I'll probably do is actually turn the stream off. If you want to go Haaland less, I wouldn't go 4-3. I wouldn't go 3-4-3, honestly. I've got no interest in that formation whatsoever. I would generally consider 3-5-2. Like, I don't really just back Darwin, unfortunately. Oh, Ben, I'm sorry about that. Was Salah vice captain. James Ward-Prowse for Archer. What do you mean, like, for next week? Probably James Ward-Prowse still. Henry, yeah, thank you. Thank you for being around. But yeah, that's it for the stream. I will be uploading my transfer plans video. I'll also do a wildcard draft for you guys who are interested in wildcarding. Obviously, the cheat sheet will be back. We've got 2 weeks of international break. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to do an update on the things that we've learned so far series. Because obviously, we've got 2 weeks now. Take some time to decompress. Take some time to enjoy international football if you even enjoy it. Or maybe stop watching football together. There shouldn't be too many price changes during the international break. People aren't that reactionary. People don't care about FPL content as far as I'm aware, as far as I can see from my views. But yeah, I think I just want you guys to take care. Obviously, decisions have been made. Once again, always focus on the process. Enjoy your green arrows and reds equally. Don't react too much to outcome. Think about the logic, and if you're unhappy with the logic, work on fixing that for the next game weeks, because that changed a lot for me last season. I think my process improved so much from the first half of last season to the second half, and I was very, very happy with the changes that I made for my own personal game. And somehow, last season, I spent 37 game weeks outside the top 10K, and then in the last game week, almost as if it was sort of meant to be. Like that was my only week within the top 10K, and I made it. But I think it was like a slow process of gradually, first of all, one, getting lucky, this is how FPL is. It's a game about getting lucky, but putting yourself once again in the position to get lucky with a good process. So that's all I'll say. And yeah, take care. All of you guys, enjoy your weekends, enjoy your families and loved ones, etc. Jumped 1.5 million in rank this week. That's awesome. That's what we like to hear, and that's what we like to see. So yeah, as I said, take care. I'll see you guys. A lot of content will be planned for you guys, trickling in through a little bit of TikTok on and Twitter content as well. But yeah, enjoy. And I'm pretty happy as well. Finally, I've got a green arrow. And here we are. All right, take care, guys. Peace out.